The most commonly used drug in the world, cannabis, one that has been made popular in the modern era with users ranging from all ages, including young kids and high-ranking professionals. It's easily forgotten that cannabis was once used for medicinal purposes for centuries. However, scaremongering tactics in the present day has led to several myths. Today we will fact-check 10 misleading myths about cannabis. Let us know in the comments section below about your thoughts on these so-called myths. Myth number 10. The use of cannabis can cause a reduction in intelligence and memory loss. This was made to be true at first based on a research study conducted on 500 Americans, with evidence showing how cannabis had a direct effect in diminishing the short-term memory in retaining new information. However, it's also misleading given that it's only true for a person who is intoxicated, which I assume is pretty normal for any drunk individual. Also, there is no scientific evidence either to suggest that it affects the long-term memory and intelligence in any way, shape, or form. Myth number 9. Cannabis is highly addictive. People tend to associate cannabis to addiction based on their understanding of cigarettes. Though cigarettes may contain nicotine, this is certainly not true for cannabis. A recent study showed that only a tiny minority of heavy users develop what appears to be a cannabis dependence, and others may rely on rehabilitation services to stop smoking, not because of the presence of any chemicals, but rather the difficulty in breaking the habit. Myth number 8. Marijuana is said to cause cancer. They do have several carcinogens present, similar to tobacco. But even hardcore cannabis smokers typically consume much less pot and certainly not enough to cause cancer. This myth carries very little truth, and you're about to find out why. A 2006 UCLA study concluded that even heavy use of marijuana does not lead to lung cancer. As stated by one of the scientists working on the project, we hypothesized that there would be a positive association between marijuana use and lung cancer, and that the association would be far more positive with heavier use. What we found instead was no association at all, and even suggestions of some protective effects. Therefore, it was concluded that cannabis can actually inhibit the growth of cancerous tumors, quite the opposite of what we were made to believe. Myth number 7. Holland and Portugal have legalized marijuana. The Dutch have never formally legalized marijuana. Since 1976, there was an official policy which allowed small coffee shops, about 700 of them, to sell only small amounts of cannabis. But growing, distributing, and importing cannabis of any sort is still a crime in the Netherlands. While Portugal decriminalized all drugs, that is not the same as legalization. Acquisition, possession, and use of pot are administrative offenses in Portugal even today, punishable by civil sanctions such as fines or community service. Myth number 6. Marijuana is healthy because it's a plant. This is certainly not true. Most drugs, including heroin, cocaine, magic mushrooms, and many more, come from poisonous and hallucinogenic plants that are unhealthy for human consumption. And that includes weed. Myth number 5. Cannabis is far worse on the lungs than smoking cigarettes. If you were to observe most communal areas, from offices to parks and restaurants, it is very noticeable that most frequent smokers out there tend to smoke commercial cigarettes as opposed to cannabis. Cannabis users limit themselves to the amount of smoke being inhaled daily. There is a much higher number of additives and chemicals being inhaled from cigarettes compared to cannabis, and because of this, cannabis does not have the same effect on the bronchial tube as cigarette smoke, therefore less likely to suffer from smoke-related diseases such as emphysema. Myth number 4. The link between cannabis and crime. Cannabis has been associated with increased levels of violence based on several misinterpreted facts. However, according to a recent study, the results prove that it had shown to reduce aggression among regular users and therefore less likely to commit crimes. Sadly, most countries have made it illegal, and therefore being in possession of the smallest amounts may lead to a night behind bars. Myth number 3. Marijuana reduces stress and anxiety. The subduing effects of cannabis make most users feel less anxious and stressed to begin with. Once the drug starts to wear off, some individuals may also experience a rebound effect of increased anxiety, which gradually increases over time for more frequent users. Not to mention the fear of getting caught and charged while being in possession of cannabis, which may also increase the levels of stress in some marijuana users. Myth number 2. Synthetic weed is safe. What utter nonsense! Commonly used drugs such as spice, fake weed, and K2 are more potent than weed sourced naturally. Man-made weed has been proven to induce psychosis at low dosage because a number of these strains do not contain CBD, which normally decreases the anxiety from THC. They also tend to slip through the net as legal drugs due to clever branding tactics by money-hungry business owners. Myth number 1. Chemicals found in cannabis, such as THC, is stored for weeks in your body fat and has a lasting effect on your health. While there may be some truth behind it, it is not entirely correct. Yes, they do accumulate in your fat stores, which is why it can be detected long after use. But that is the case for most drugs and not specific to cannabis. Also, THC in the body fat is not harmful in any way to the brain, fat, or any other parts of the body. Any remaining residues of THC has no long-lasting health issues according to many research projects.